A case of business robbery has been opened after a group of armed suspects targeted a church in Johannesburg. Parishioners have had their personal belongings taken by gun-wielding men. Just last month in Diepsloot, congregants were robbed and a pastor was killed by criminals. We're now joined by the South African Council of Churches General Secretary, Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana. Bishop Mpumlwana, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. The church, of course, is supposed to be a safe space. In fact, it is one of the last places that one expects attacks of this nature to be taking place. But that picture seems to be changing.
You could say that, indeed. It's tragic, not only because of the trauma that it causes on congregations and pastors. I mean, think about the death of Pastor Mzila at Diepsloot last month, and then hot on the heels of that, this attack happens. I was talking today with Pastor Nchangas, who was senior pastor of that congregation that was attacked on Saturday. He says the trauma that people are experiencing, it's almost like they will be fearful to go to worship. So he asks himself, what kind of protection can we call for? It's impossible to have police in every congregation watching until worship is done. Just beyond even consideration. Poor communities do not have the capacity to employ, security services to protect them. They don't search people coming into church. The church is supposed to be open for everybody to walk in any time. And that's exactly what we're arguing in days of COVID. That when somebody was suggesting that we should only allow people that are vaccinated, we said we can't do that because it's supposed to be open for everyone. And there we are now. I mean, I'm at a loss for words.
Do you think that this is an indication of a shift in our moral fiber? Because really, churches, at the heart of it, also an institution that is working with the most vulnerable in our society too. Yes, it's not exclusive to the most vulnerable, but when one attacks a church, you're mindful of the fact that among the people that you will be stealing from are people who may have nothing.
Kathy, the majority of worshippers in this country are extremely poor people. These are people who give of themselves in their worship in a way that you do not find in affluent societies. The place of worship, I mean, it was the last we had this kind of violation of worship space was in apartheid days, where the apartheid security forces would ram into churches. And I mean, I work for the South African Council of Churches, whose building, Khotso House, the place of peace, was bombed by the apartheid regime. We have never, ever imagined that in democratic South Africa, the levels of crime would be such that the place of worship, which is naturally referred to as a sanctuary, would be a place of terror. This is beyond imagination. And we cannot even say there is a way. I mean, we are in the 16 days of protest against the violation of women and children. Maybe there is some kind of message in this, that the churches become as vulnerable as the girls and women of our society. That maybe, just maybe it is a way of saying, feel the insecurity that women and girls are experiencing in our society. And if enough of our churches feel this insecurity, they will know how the girl child feels when they have to walk in the street. Maybe, just maybe, that might be it. maybe we can do something about that vulnerability, which is why this every day at noontime, at the Council of Churches, we're inviting people to join us on our Facebook to pray for different themes each day. But I think that it is a sad day that churches can be places of such vulnerability.
What are the conversations that this has led to you as the Council of Churches having to have, in particular, around the safety of your members? Because one also has an appreciation for the fact that the majority of churches cannot afford to even get private security. And, you know, in a country like South Africa, we do tend to put an emphasis on the so-called mega churches, but we know that those form a very small fraction of the total representation of churches in this country.
Kathy, since the weekend, I've had just countless calls. And mind you, this church is not even a member of the South African Council of Churches. Well, that doesn't matter. The church in Diepsloot is not a member of the South African Council of Churches. That doesn't matter. That assault on any of these churches is an assault on all religious communities. It could have been a mosque, could have been a Hindu temple, could have been a Jewish synagogue. All of us are at one on serving the emotional, pastoral needs of our communities. And the calls just from the church leaders of the Southern Council of Churches are saying, look, you know, we've got to act on this. We've got to do something about this. And so we will be convening a conversation about what should be our action. And as I was talking to Pastor Njanga said today, expressing our support for them, and then saying that at the very least, you know, we will be offering them prayers. But I told him that we will be coming back to them, because once we have had our consultations, we will have some kind of minimum proposal that we can put for the churches. But I think that at most I can say churches in every ward in this country, there are no less than 10, 15 churches. These are community institutions, community services. There isn't a single church in this country that's built without the money of the locals in that neighborhood. Mm. And so I can only just appeal to local communities to help in apprehending the perpetrators of these crimes, because they are known, they live in our communities as well. We couldn't even call the pastor over the weekend because the phones have been taken. And so it just means that we need a much more vigilant community of society that says, not in our church, not in the church in our community, not at all.
Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana, let me thank you so much for your time tonight. And of course, he's the General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches.